either somebody is in the midst of adversity or just came out of adversity, or it won't be long before they head into adversity. So you need to be prepared either way. My name is Inky Johnson. A lot of people know me by Inky Johnson, but my real name is Inquarius. I'm an inspirational speaker, as some would say. I like to just look at it as serving. You know, at one point I was a collegiate football player at the University of Tennessee, and my career ended abruptly making a tackle, almost lost my life, ended up paralyzing my right arm and hand, and that's what led me to the journey that I'm on now. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, east side of Atlanta to be specific, in a neighborhood by the name of Kirkwood. So born and bred right in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia. So Kirkwood, inner city, and at the time when I was growing up in Kirkwood, it was a pretty rough place. One of the roughest, but just like any other inner city, drugs, gangs, violence, you name it, we had it. So I was born to a mother at 16 years old, a single mother, and she was working a double shift at Wendy's. And at the time, she took me back to 125 Warren. So 125 Warren was a 2-bedroom home. You know, it's 14 of us living there in that house. And I slept on the floor, you know, with my cousins, with aunts, you know, there's a lot of us. And when I was in that household, you know, my uncles were going in and out of jail, prison, from doing different crimes. And so being there, it kind of affected me in a couple of different ways. You know, I got to see both sides of the spectrum. I got to see my mother get up and go to work. You know, even though she was a single mother, had a hard time raising a son, then she later had my little sister, but she still got up and she went to work, and she did it the honest way. My friends up the street, they were struggling the same way. They lived the same way. They slept on the floor the same way. They didn't have beds, right? And so when I started playing sports, the thing that sports did for me, I think the most important, it wasn't just opportunity, it gave me exposure. And so I remember the first time I went to my coach's house, and I was like, man, like his kids got their own room. Like they got their own beds, right? Like they're living. They don't have to rush to the dinner table to try to make sure they rush to get the food because they don't have as many people in the house. Whereas with us, you got 14, 15 people at one time in the house, you got to rush to try to eat sometimes, right? And so when I got to experience a different side of life, I remember coming back and talking to my cousins, and I was like, it's a different life out there. And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, it's a different life. Like, it's people that don't live like this, right? Like, this is not normal. And they couldn't fathom it, right? Until we were with my coach one day, and I remember he bought me my first steak, right? And I came back home and I was like, man, coach bought me a steak. Man, I got a steak, right? And I was so hyped. But what it did for me was it made me realize that people didn't have to live like that if they didn't want to. When I came to, my teammates were standing over me like, Ink, get up, let's rock. I was like, I can't, right? I can't move. There was a shock going through my body. I couldn't feel anything. But me thinking it's just a stinger, shoulder injury, nothing too serious, right? And when they get me over to the hospital and they run their test, and then they bring me back into a room, and my mother had just left the room, kissing, praying, you know, kissed me on my head, praying, and saying, Ink, you'll be fine, right? And when she walks out, the doctor runs in and says, guys, we got to rush this kid back to emergency surgery. He's about to die. And so the next morning I woke up, I was grateful that I was still alive, right? And I think because of the seriousness of the situation, right? It made me view football in a micro way. In terms of, I love the game, right? It hurt that my career ended, right? It hurt it, right? But I was there. My life was spared. Like if they didn't catch that my artery had busted and I was bleeding internally, I could have went to sleep that night, and the next morning, the title on the newspaper would have been different. It wouldn't have been Inky Johnson suffered possibly career-ending injury. It'd have been Inky Johnson lost his life last night from a tackle made in the game. And so it made me view it differently. And so we all go through adversity, opposition. I think that's the thing that makes us all in common as people, right? No matter if you're from London, Atlanta, Florida, California, New York. Like, we're all going to go through something at some point or phase in our life, right? And as cliche as it sounds, when the quote says, it's never about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to it. That's very true, right? But in the same sense, I think what's most important is when we go through something, what's the perspective that we have of it, right? Because for most people, when you go through something, the person's natural perspective is, okay, what did I lose, right? What happened to me? Like, I took a loss, right? People never look at it and say, okay, man, tell me, what did you gain, right? Even though I know it hurt, you didn't want to go through it, but look at it in a way to where you can say, what's the lesson in this, right? What would you say life is trying to teach you from dealing with this? And so when I went through it, my perspective was, okay, what can I extract from it to apply to other areas and aspects of my life that I feel can help other people? And I firmly believe the quicker you can shift your perspective from yourself to others when you're in the midst of adversity, the quicker you'll get through it. And I was like, bingo, this is how I got through it. This is how I dealt with it, right? But I had to shift my perspective from why me to why not me. Like, when we go through a situation and circumstance, it's easy to step back and think, man, I just went through this and it's just my experience. I firmly believe when we go through things, it's for us to deal with it, get over it, and reach back over the hill to help another person. This too shall pass, right? And the reason I would say that is, like I said, I champion adversity, right? We know what to do when things go right. But the next time it gets tough, the next time you question your purpose, the next time you question your existence, your mission, if you're supposed to be doing what you're doing, and it gets tough and challenging, just whisper to yourself, this too shall pass. This too shall pass.